This month on Inquisitive, Your Miracle Resource, the podcast, we discuss building relationships inquisitively.
This month we're talking about building relationships inquisitively, and this is in reference of Inquisitive Culture, the book written by Katherine. And this is chapter 12. If anyone has the book, or you can go on Amazon, as well as other retailers to pick it up. Do you want to start talking about Rose and Frankie? You just want to jump in?
Sure, I'd love to. So in the book Inquisitive Culture, I feature a story, the names are changed, but it's a very powerful story that we've told all of our trainers, our 54 trainers across the country. We have now 100,000 people have been trained in brand plus team equals revenue. And this is everybody's favorite story. So I want to share it with you because we're talking about building relationships inquisitively. Frankie came to us. She was a client who had been a vice president of a company, smaller company, and she got a job as a vice president of a very, very large corporation. And the corporation had several campuses around the country. Well, Frankie in this new role is going to be the vice president of one of these big, large campus sites. And she has to go to a monthly meeting, and the monthly meeting is at the corporate headquarters. So all of the vice presidents who run these campuses, these smaller entities, have to go to the big corporate once a month. And Frankie has always shared and will always share, and again, we've changed her name, that she puts her nose to the grindstone. She likes to work, and she really doesn't care about building relationships. But she knew in this new role that she wanted to change some things. In her past jobs, she hadn't had the support system. There were some kind of tough times with team members. So she came to us to help not only build the brand team and culture of the new organization, but also her strategic personal brand. So we challenged Frankie, and this was not an easy challenge. We said, when you start at the new company, we want you to connect to a new person and really spend at least 15 minutes with them, getting to know what they do and how you can support their role. And Frankie kind of looked at us like, oh my gosh, do I have to do that? And we shared, the return on investment after you do something like that is you build a strong support system. And she finally believed us, because every corporate monthly meeting, when she had to go to the big corporate headquarters, we said to her, hey, you're going to be on campus anyway with the main people and all the leadership, so why don't you set up meetings? So she literally had a 9, a 9:30, a 10, a 10:30, like the whole time till this big 2:45 meeting. The big meeting was 2:45, everybody would come. Well, one of the other campus vice presidents, we'll call her Rose, she would come to the meeting at 2:45. She didn't build relationships, and she just would come in. And Frankie would tell us each month, that, she was meeting people and they were saying hi and they were asking about her because of these one-on-one meetings, right? So 9 months into this job, it's time to do budgets. And as a vice president of all of these campuses, each vice president has to put through their budget. And Rose put through her budget and Frankie put through her budget. Everybody else did as well. And when the budgets were announced at that 10-month meeting, Frankie got like 100% of her budget. She got everything she asked for her campus. Rose got 15%. Rose was steaming. And literally Frankie called me and said, Rose was sitting next to her and steaming. She could feel the steam coming off her. She was so mad that Frankie, who was new, got everything that she needed for her campus, 100%. Now, here's the sad thing as you listen to this story. Rose worked hard. She had her nose to the grindstone. She did a good job. Her campus needed those things. Corporate only gave her 15%. Frankie, on the other hand, because she built relationships and people really knew her, she got 100%. Now, her campus needed things too. So it seems unfair, doesn't it? Because both were working very hard, but we got Frankie to work smart. It is very hard to say no to someone when you've built a strong relationship. So being inquisitive means that Frankie took the time to listen and observe. We never told Frankie, you're going to go out and network with these people. We said, we want you to listen and observe. And a key thing I said was, when you listen and observe, find out what you can do for these people you're meeting with, not just what you can get. So the key with inquisitive relationships is listening and observing. And I want you guys to know, Frankie and Rose, that story is famous because all of us need to build relationships, reach out, listen and observe, and not just say, hey, what's in it for me? But what can I do to help the team? You know, Frankie understood the corporation and how her campus could help the corporation. But she also listened to how she could be supportive of the people she was meeting with. And I want you guys to know, this was not easy for Frankie. This is not an easy thing to do. And I have people who are listening right now saying, I would hate to do that, Katherine. But remember what we said. It was one person a day. And then the days, that monthly meeting, of course, she met more people. So when you hear this and you think about it, if you're really listening and observing, you get to know people's motivations, what's important to them, how you fit into the role, what you can ask and what's not okay to ask. When we don't do that, we have problems. And Sarah, you know, we work with a big team of people and we have freelancers working with us. And over the years of Sarah and I working together, you know, there's been people who were a really good fit. There were some people who weren't a really good fit. When I wrote Inquisitive Culture, I really changed how I looked at my relationships, because part of building relationships is protecting yourself. There are some folks that there's a certain kind of relationship you should have with them, and then there's a relationship you shouldn't have with them. So here's an example. In the book last month, we talked about having the spider person, the person who's going to tell lies and spread rumors to get ahead so that way you can be left behind. If you're inquisitive, you've listened and observed this person enough to know what you need to do, when you need to stand up for yourself, when you need to draw boundaries so you can protect yourself. So Sarah, thanks for letting me share that, because that seems to be everybody's favorite. I know it's mine because, again, I got that phone call from Frankie when she said Rose was steaming. I could feel the heat coming off her. She was so mad. And, you know, hey, I've been Rose. I've been the person who puts my head down and, you know, really doesn't have time to talk to anybody because I've got so much to do. And, you know, the sad thing is they both needed that stuff for their divisions, their campus sites. And Frankie got it because she built relationships inquisitively.
You don't have to meddle into somebody's life to figure out how to solve their issues at work. It's not trying to get under their skin or anything like that. It's really like building with them.
And well said, Sarah, because in the first section of chapter 12, we talk about value and, you know, do you feel valued in the relationship? But I want to talk with you guys who write to us and all those who are listening, you know, the difficult people in your life. You know, they may not be in your workplace. They may be in your relative circle. When you look at the difficult people, if you can honestly value them for what they're good at, you know, you may not like someone, but if you can value what they bring to the team or to the family, you can survive it. And recently, with everything going on in our society, and the taping of this is November 9th of 2020. So, you know, we've just had election and pandemic and social revolution. And I want to speak with you guys when we look at our relationships about the reality of the people that you're talking to and yourself. Knowing your emotional triggers right now. Recently, you know, I worked with a company where there had been a little argument between staff members, and then everybody took sides. They were like a divided company, kind of like a divided country that we've talked about. And because of this division, it was impacting the revenue, the performance of the team. And when I success coach and I go in and I talk with them about what's going on, it was all triggers with having to handle things with COVID and compliance. It was also a confidence issue on one person's part. The coworker was asking for something, and when they were with me alone, they said, you know, I just didn't feel confident I could get it done. And I said, so what did you do? And he shared, well, I just spouted off at her. I just was really nasty and I shouldn't have said what I said. And I said, so that happened because you felt uncomfortable, you couldn't do it. And he said, yeah, I should have asked for help. I should have. So in essence, he just was not feeling good about what he had to do. He didn't feel confident. And instead of asking for help, just took it out on the person who was right in front of him. Now, as you hear that story, you guys need to know, just like I do, just like Sarah does, just like we all do, when you have an unprecedented time, a pandemic, you have loss of loved ones. I know many people have lost loved ones. You have loss of jobs, furloughed. Who's going to have a job next week? I mean, literally, that was really intensely going on, especially this summer. I want to share with you, we all have to remember that's where we're at. And in this chapter, chapter 12, I say, let me ask you a question. And I told the story about Frankie and Rose. You know, Rose was really angry because here's this new person who comes in and gets everything she wants. But who's the smarter person? When you look back, what Rose did, and I need to follow up with this, was she said to Frankie, how did you get 100% of your budget? And she said, I worked with this company, Miracle Resources, and they told me about building relationships. And so I pretty much knew everybody in this company at 3 months. So who hired us? Rose. I mean, you know, it's working smart. So when someone yells at you or their trigger goes off, instead of being upset and really taking it internally or lashing back out, sometimes it's best to just take a moment and realize, okay, this is what's going on with this person. And sometimes they will tell you, you know, sometimes they'll come back and say, look, I'm so sorry. You know, I didn't mean it. This happened. But I do want you guys to know, and everybody think about this as you're listening. When was a time that someone crossed the line with you? And even if they apologized, you were pretty much done. Keep that in mind. That's why we got to be careful what we say. So we don't want to end a relationship unless it's toxic and bad for us. But when we have triggers within our own family and our friends circle, sometimes it's good to just stop and go, okay, what's going on with this person? What are they feeling? And give a little grace. And of course, we want grace in return because we make mistakes. But also know once it comes out of your mouth, you can't get it back in. So something that we should think about when we build inquisitive relationships.
Even when you're talking with somebody, if you just pull yourself away from the situation and think about it for a few moments, that instead of lashing out, there's a potential other thing going on. So also in the book, you described the $1 million question.
Oh, I love the $1 million question. Sadly, and you know, I always think when a problem happens or an unfortunate time and we learn from it, it's great. But when it happens, it's sad. So the $1 million question stems from a couple of different things that have happened, and it's really helped me a lot. And we use it in training a lot. When someone is disrespectful to you or they're angry with you, you can ask them the $1 million question and you will always find out what was really going on. So in the book, I talk about a client and he's told me to share this with you without using his name. So we'll call him Mr. D. Mr. D, working with Miracle Resources, is yelling at me in front of my staff. And this was a very difficult situation because we always had a great relationship and their staff and our staff got along. But I don't know what it was about Katherine Miracle, but Mr. D was just not happy with me. And literally, they're one of our biggest clients. We still work with them now. And, you know, I didn't want to say anything in front of everybody else, but my staff is saying to me, hey, what happened? You know, what's going on? Mr. D is like, really, you know, I'm so sorry that's happening to you, because it was embarrassing. I mean, it was really bad. And Mr. D in these meetings was just really nasty to me. So alone, after everybody had left the meeting, I said to Mr. D, did I do something or say something that was disrespectful? And he said, Katherine, no. He said, not at all. And then he took a moment, he just kind of paused and he said, Katherine, you know, Beverly and I are going through a horrific divorce and you know you look just like her. And I literally went, because I do look like his ex-wife. Everything that was bottling up about that impending divorce, when he saw my face, because I looked so much like him, he was taking out on me. And he said, I'm so sorry. Now, guys, many of you would say, but why did you say, did I do something? Did I say something? It wasn't your fault. You're correct. It wasn't my fault. But I don't want to lose a client. I don't want to lose a relationship. We have a lot of fun working with them. They're a great client. But I knew that if I was defensive to him, like, Mr. D, you're treating me really bad. What's going on? I wouldn't have gotten the same result. See, he figured out what happened to him. And I want you guys to know when there are tough situations, they're going to continue to stay tough unless you talk about it and ask the question, You didn't do anything wrong, but there's nothing wrong with using the $1 million question by saying, did I do something or did I say something? You know you didn't do anything. You know you didn't say anything wrong, but that lets the person think through and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I've literally said to some people who have been disrespectful to me, I've said, have I been disrespectful to you? Did I do something or say something? And they're like, oh, no, was I disrespectful to you? Right? So the $1 million question works with all relationships, not just professional ones. And what we want you guys to know is when you go to work or you go in these family circles and these tough times happen, it's not going to change unless you try some of these things that we've put in this book. And then it makes it better. Now, there are people who will say, I'm so sorry, and then they'll go right back and do it again. We all know that. But once you know that, you know your expectation. So on my filter, you can see Inquisitive Culture behind me, and you see the lifeguard chair. That's how we work at Miracle Resources. We're the lifeguard. We listen, we observe. We're going to jump in the water and save you, but we're not going to come and bug you. We're not going to berate you with questions. We're going to listen and observe. We learn so much more that way.
The thing that I love about the $1 million question is it by taking potential accountability of the situation, you then question their accountability, and it forces them to step back and have a totally different perspective on it. Because I've done that. I've eaten this book up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I absolutely love it because I've done it across the board, and I've approached my relationships, and I've noticed that it flips the coin and it really makes the other person question what they're doing because they don't even realize what they're doing until you ask one pivotal question that really pulls them out.
I love how you said that. I wish I could have put that in the book because you just said that so well. I'm like, wow, that should have been in the book. And you're right. It does make the person become accountable. Now, if they are someone who's like, they just don't see it. They're not willing to take the accountability. Okay, you know that, you know how that person is. We've all been in workplace situations with people who are not taking accountability. It's the person who in the workplace, people say, how is this person still have their job? Well, they bring some value, they bring some return on investment, or they wouldn't be there. But if you know that's how that person's going to be, then you can prepare. I'm not saying you can change people. Some people will change. And like you said, Sarah, it helps them, become accountable. But for the ones who won't, at least you know the questions to ask and the ones never to ask.
Going through this book, I've actually recommended it to a ton of friends and family just across the board because, like you said, it can help in professional and business. And I always tell them, grab a notebook. You're going to end up writing down half of the book on the paper. But I think this is actually one of my favorite chapters, so I'm really glad we're going over it. But there's test yourself moments in this book. And I was talking to my friend about it, and I said, when someone asks you to test yourself verbally, you don't always do it because you don't want to speak it out loud. But if you are in your privacy of your home and you're comfortable and you're writing it on a piece of paper and you're the only one seeing it, I think it's really great because it really forces the truth out of you on paper. And then you go back and reread it and you realize how to improve your relationships. But what I think is so great is there's a 9-question test in chapter 12. And it goes through on how people like to communicate. And you start writing it down. And then by the last question, it had me laughing because I could hear it in Katherine's voice saying, do you realize that you communicate when it's convenient for you? And I was like, oh my gosh, she totally called me out. And she's not even here. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, that's what I love about this book is that you'll have these moments where you feel really comfortable and Katherine just jumps out and rips the rose-colored glasses off because it's just true. It's like, you know what, that's true. And that's, I think, the most interactive book that I've ever had because I'm like, oh my gosh, she just called me out and she doesn't even know it. And I totally fixed my problems. And you go about your relationships different. And then afterwards, once she calls you out, she gives you the solutions to it or the suggestions to it. And I think it's like the greatest thing on the planet because I'm biased, but I still think it's great because I just love that it does that. And I told my friends that I'm like, it'll put you in your seat and you don't even know it's doing it. And my friends are like, I agree. Because when you're writing it down, you are getting called out, but you're calling out yourself in the process. And I just think that's a great tool to have going through it. So.
And thanks for sharing that. I would just say that, I have to say that I have to call myself out as well. That's what helped me in all this research and working with people. Because again, when someone is on their way home and they have nothing to do while they're driving, they're like, hey, I think I'll call this person. And, it's not, again, it's not as convenient. And our relationships can really be damaged by not listening and observing. And I know we have a ton of married people and people in relationships that listen to our podcast and also watch us on WCTV. So I'm going to say to you guys, again, are you the person when you walk in the door that you want to drop everything and find out how your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend's day was? Or do you want to get settled, put your stuff away? I mean, that's one of the biggest things in relationships is figuring out what works for people. And Sarah, we've done a ton of events and, we'll arrive at an event and when people are in your face and you have stuff you got to get done, it's why can't they see that? And we all have that, especially with the holidays coming up. And I want to spend just a minute on that, if that's okay with you, Sarah. The holidays are coming up and of course they're going to be different because of COVID. But many people, the holidays, they're spending time with people they don't really want to spend time with. And they say, oh my gosh, it stressed me out. And what am I going to do? And then there's other people, they love every minute of it. But listen and observe and watch and understand, that we all move differently. We all work differently. But if you want those relationships, we all have to adjust, all of us. Now, there's some people who aren't willing to adjust. I know that. But why I think it's just so important for everybody who's listening, understand that, yes, it is your accountability, but it's also your protection. And that's why the lifeguard chair's in the background. Part of relationships are protecting yourself. I work with a lot of people who are people pleasers, and I'm a reformed people pleaser. I'm telling you, inquisitive culture and all the research helped me grow into not being a people pleaser. It can be exhausting for people who are people pleasers. And honestly, start protecting yourself. You can't help someone else if you're not okay yourself. A lifeguard has to be in tip-top shape to run out and save somebody, right? You have to listen to observe, understand what's going on. But a lot of times when we're giving and giving so much, we become exhausted. So I just had to give that message to everybody who's listening. As much as we say, we should be accountable, we also have to understand, that we have to protect ourselves and we have to be true to ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true because I get that same way as well. Is when I'm not my best, then I can't when I'm trying to socialize with people, especially now. I don't know if anyone else out there is feeling it lately, but I've still gone out and done things like just the necessary things, but anymore because it's strange that in the course of 11 months now, if you get in front of a small group of people even, it's just socially draining. So I think it's very important to brush up essentially on those skills again, because you don't realize, going into the holiday season, if you go to see any loved ones or anything, that you just get socially drained anymore. Because I was actually talking about that with my mother. She said that she went out and just visited 2 or 3 friends, and she said, I was never tired after 2 or 3 hours. I'm like, well, we have to re-socialize essentially all over again and have that emotional intelligence, because that's just, I'm surprised at how fast that went away for how social we are.
That's really good, Sarah, because when you said reset, that is true. We were used to running at a different pace. And I know I've talked about it. I was on a podcast, Mark Wiggins' podcast, and one of the things I said is when we go back to the old ways, there are some things I'm not going back to. I would go out to lunch 5 days a week with clients. I'm not doing that. I'm able to cook at home. I've lost weight. I'm getting healthier. There's some stuff that we need to say, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do this. And I agree with you, Sarah. I do think that we need to reset. I think that's important But you also said, and I loved it, you talked about the emotions. We're all experiencing COVID differently. You know, for us as a company, we were 50% virtual anyway. We went to 100% in March. But when we look at some people, this dynamic has changed everything in their lives. We're talking job loss, we're talking, death of loved ones. So we're all experiencing it differently. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but you see some of these posts on social media and you think, how can they not understand? My step granddaughter, Alex, she's in the military. She's in National Guard. And she said that a couple people had written to her and they were complaining they couldn't get their nails done. And, she's out in the field trying not to get hypothermia, doing her basic training. And she said, it's hard for me, to relate. And it can be really hard for us to relate because we're coming at this so different. And that's, again, why that message of listening and observing and not judging, not saying, well, this is so bad. I look at people who they were really social and they live off of that. I'm an ambivert. I'm an extrovert and an introvert. So I'm in the middle. So I'm okay with staying home and reading a book. I'm all right with that. But I know other people that's going to kill them. They can't do that. So I think that's part of it too, is understanding, by listening, observing where people are at. And I agree with you, Sarah. I think it can be emotionally draining.
Yeah, absolutely. Just across the board. It's going to be a ride till 2021, I suppose. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, I have new tactics when I go out with people. I don't know. It is kind of like a reset. You don't realize what you were doing before until you don't do it for such a long time. And I just think it's one of those weird feelings that you didn't think was going to happen as fast as it did, I suppose. And it happened. So we're all kind of for a learning curve, but that's completely true. It's like this affected everyone in a different way. So I feel as though I have to tread lightly, but that's why I've always been the one that sat back, observed a situation before I dove in. And I have quite a few people now that come up to me and they say, I'm so glad that you do that. And I was like, well, you kind of have to sometimes. Like, I'm not one to just kind of push all my opinions out right out the gate. I definitely want to make sure that I'm not like, I have to tread lightly essentially now, and even lighter foot, just because of everything that everyone's going through. I think that's an important thing, that we're all going to be treading a little bit lighter now. So.
And I'm thankful you're modeling that behavior because, like you said, when somebody sees you do it, and this chapter talks about the push and the pull, you need some people who can push you and motivate you, but you also need some people who gently pull you in. They listen and they observe. And I like how you're doing a balance of that. And your friends are even saying to you, hey, I really like that you do that, because then they'll model that behavior. And it is important. We do need friends and people in our lives who keep us accountable. Some people call it, this person calls me on my BS, somebody who's really honest, but again, does it in a way, like I always say, I like to encourage, but I like to challenge. I'm going to encourage you, but I'm going to challenge you. And I also know by watching body language when I can challenge and when maybe I should lean back a little bit. So like you said, this chapter 12, is so much about the push and pull. And I just ask every audience member, email us. Sarah and I, you know how to get in touch with us. We're co-hosts of this podcast. At the end of the day, we both will respond. We got some nice emails from last month's podcast about the help that was given and what we talked about. And that was great because we talked about the scary workplaces. And we always get the emails that say, I go into work crying. On the way home, I'm crying. Things are so bad. And we're giving them these solutions to help them get through it. Now we're in November, we're going into the holidays and the new year. Things may change very much. And like you said, Sarah, some people may need to reset and they may need to, re-socialize. But we always need some people who can pull us in and some people who push us. And we need to do the same thing for other people as well. So this is a huge area, the push and pull. If you do not have those people in your life, get them. That's important. That's really important to have those people in your life.
Absolutely. I think I wrote down, I have, every time I would be reading this book, I would snap a picture of it on my phone and then I'd write it down in my journal. And one thing that I absolutely loved out of your book, if you don't mind if I just quote it.
Yeah, do it.
It was
Love it.
About your personal push and your pull was your mother and your father. And you said, my mother as the moon, The moon gives me time to reflect on the day and plan strategically. My father is the sun, his light and push start my day and challenge me to look at my accountability. In the sun, everything is exposed. And I think that defines push and pull so well. Because I never thought of it that way until I read it. And I said that's beautifully written, first of all, but I absolutely love the idea of it because I do agree. You need someone to pull you back into it, but then in the morning light, you're still going to have to be exposed. So you really need to be able to push yourself and challenge yourself. And I just think that's wonderfully written. So I just absolutely adored that. But I just love that in the sun, everything is exposed. And it just reminded me of being young and trying to, like, you try and find the shade, but as an adult, you really have to just embrace the new challenges that are coming. And I think I just loved it. So I just wanted to let you know.
So much. And yeah, for the people watching the video, it's hard for me not to cry because both of my parents passed within 7 months of each other. And it is really tough. I mean, it's still tough, but they teach you so much, and that's why I posted this week about be the thing about the person that you lost. Be the thing you love the most about the person you lost. And I look at it and I say, my mom, who was so inquisitive, she would listen and observe, and she really took her time, to get to know people. Two things. By doing that, she protected herself because she would really, do you ever have a bad friendship and your mom goes, hey, I don't know about that person. Okay, well, my mom knew, and she was always right because she would listen and observe. So there was the protection, but also listening, observing to find out about someone. And literally, my mom could say, well, do you remember when your friend Renee or Chris or Laura and Monica, they're all my really super good friends from when I was young. She would say, well, remember when they told you that story, or remember what happened to them? And I'm like, how does she remember that? Because she listened and observed. And so she knew them, and they all loved her. She loved all of them. She just had a really strong connection with each one of my friends and with people. And so that's the thing that I'm hoping in me. I want to be best at that. And that is in honor of my mom. So everybody on this call or watching the video, when you think about someone that you lost, what's something about them that's so amazing and so good? Maybe it's something that they did. Do that. Make that your gift to the world. That's in honor of them. That's the best tribute you could do for someone. It really is. So Sarah, thanks for pointing that one out. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you emotional, but I just thought that was so wonderful.
You done it. Mark will say when he goes through the podcast, and hi to Mark Quinn. He releases our podcast. Hello, Katherine. I heard you go, because I did. Because it's like, I still have to almost sometimes catch my breath, thinking that they're gone, is such a big part of your life. And, that's why if you can make that your pain a campaign, do something in honor of the person that you lost. Be the best thing that they were. That's a great way to say it.
I like that. Be the pain and bring the campaign in your pain. Because that's how I've done it too. Like, I guess now that you're saying it, now I realize that I've done that too. But yeah, it's just, I think it's so great. And I just think inquisitive culture, it's just all about the diversity in the relationships. And I think that this book is my favorite book so far until you write your next one. But
Thank you.
Like I said, it's the brilliance in the pages. It just really dives deep, and you become transparent as an author in this as well, because you share your personal stories, and I feel as though that you build a relationship within these pages with anyone who reads it. And I think that's just fantastic. So, but yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. And everybody who's listening, I know before Sarah wraps up, I just want to say we are getting your emails. We're responding to them. We got a nice one today. I didn't get a chance to even tell you, Sarah, from somebody who's really looking at their workplace and struggling with the culture, and they're really thinking about leaving that workplace. And, one of the things I always say is when team training happens at the workplace, everyone can bond around it. And again, we don't make you go around the room and say who you are. A lot of people hate that. What we do instead is, we give a little exercise, we give a little bit of information, let you work individually, sometimes in a small group. And I know that we can change this culture because they want to change the culture. And so now our job is the race of, don't let this person leave. We don't want this person to leave. Let's get that culture, because you don't want to leave the company and find out, oh my gosh, this culture is so great now. Why did I leave? Right. So I just want you guys to know we are getting those emails, those direct messages, and we're getting back to you. And then the December show will probably be based on what you write to us, so, please know if there's something you want us to cover. Maybe it's something before the holidays. Last year, we did something to try to handle grief before the holidays. It was just so strange because last year we didn't know what we were walking into. And we did this, how to handle grief, like if you've lost a loved one, and how to communicate during a time of grief during the holidays. So this is Sarah will decide, but send it to us, and then we'll base that December show on all of you. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, if you have any stories or any workplace troubles or anything, email km@miracleresources.com and we'll definitely get in touch with you. But yeah, you can find us on all social media, and we will talk to you guys next month.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Sarah from the podcast. If you'd like to submit your stories, you can send them to km@miracleresources.com with the subject line Inquisitive, Your Miracle Resource. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you back here next month. Bye.